After years of tightly guarded decorum, Queen Camilla has spoken, and what she said has ignited a royal firestorm. In a move no one predicted, she publicly confirmed a bitter, long-rumoured feud with Princess Catherine's mother, Carole Middleton. But what triggered this confession? And why now? The veil of politeness has finally shattered, revealing long-simmering contempt inside the palace gates. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The leak didn't come from a journalist or a wayward aide, it came from Camilla herself, during what was meant to be an off-the-record discussion among senior royal advisors. According to multiple corroborating sources, Camilla's voice was calm but cutting, her words unmistakable. "I've tried civility, but I won't feign respect for a woman who's spent years pretending to be harmless while poisoning the roots of our family." The moment the words were uttered, the air reportedly went still. And then, hours later, the leak emerged, first to a trusted royal correspondent, then splashed across the headlines. Buckingham Palace, known for swift responses to scandal, remained eerily silent. For a full 36 hours, not a single statement was issued, and that silence only fueled the blaze. Royal watchers were stunned not just by the admission, but by the timing. Why now? Why, after decades of strained but surface-level civility between Camilla and Carole, did the Queen Consort decide to tear the curtain? Behind the scenes, aides say this wasn't a spontaneous outburst. It was a deliberate move, a public volley in a Cold War that had long simmered behind the drapes of royal etiquette. Camilla's calculated tone carried neither regret nor ambiguity. She was not speculating, she was confirming. And that confirmation instantly placed Carole Middleton, long regarded as a dignified and devoted matriarch, at the center of a narrative she had carefully avoided for years. For Catherine, caught between the woman who raised her and the queen she must serve beside, the emotional stakes are unimaginable. Friends close to the princess say she was visibly distressed when the news broke. The timing could not have been worse amid mounting scrutiny over her health, increasing responsibilities within the firm, and growing pressure to project stability amid a fracturing monarchy. Now, her mother had been dragged into the spotlight not as a silent pillar of support, but as the Queen's declared adversary. Camilla's words didn't just confirm a feud, they ignited a re-examination of every public encounter between the two women. Royal analysts pulled footage, lip readers analysed expressions, insiders whispered of moments long dismissed as trivial. And what they uncovered was disturbing. Tension beneath smiles, frost behind polite greetings, and a thread of animosity woven so expertly into protocol that few had dared name it. Until now, Camilla had not simply ended her silence, she had detonated it, and in doing so, she placed the monarchy in a volatile new phase of internal reckoning, with ripple effects that threatened to reshape familial loyalty and public trust. But to understand why Camilla would risk the monarchy's fragile unity, we must rewind to a moment few remember, a private encounter that changed everything. They were alone. Carole Middleton and Camilla Parker Bowles tucked away in the private gardens of Clarence House. What began as a polite walk quickly turned into a tense verbal standoff. Years later, whispers of that day still echo through the corridors of royal memory. Now, we reveal what was said and why neither woman ever forgave the other. It was spring of 2007, a delicate period for both women. William and Catherine's relationship was intensifying, with mounting speculation of a proposal. Camilla, though still navigating her public role after decades of scrutiny, had finally begun, solidifying her place beside Charles. Carole, meanwhile, had watched her daughter rise from university sweetheart to potential future queen, and with that rise came scrutiny, judgment, and thinly veiled condescension from those who viewed the Middletons as outsiders. When Carole accepted a discreet invitation to Clarence House, an opportunity arranged under the guise of familial cohesion, she did so with cautious optimism. But what she walked into wasn't tea and diplomacy. It was a reckoning. Accounts from two separate household aides confirm the tension began almost immediately. Camilla, behind her usual charm, wasted no time expressing concern over Catherine's adaptability to royal expectations. She questioned her work ethic, her readiness for royal life, and most jarringly, her family's perceived lack of aristocratic roots. Carole, fiercely protective and long underestimated, did not take kindly to the insinuation. What was intended to be an exchange of polite courtesies veered into confrontation when Carole reportedly asked Camilla why Kate had been consistently kept at arm's length from key events. Camilla's response, according to a senior equerry who later confided in a former royal correspondent, was chilling in its directness. "Your daughter may marry in, but she'll never rule." The words struck Carole like a blow to the chest. They weren't just dismissive, they were damning. To a mother who had spent years preparing her daughter for the scrutiny and sacrifice of royal life, it was an unforgivable insult. That phrase, uttered in the filtered sunlight of a secluded garden, would become a silent oath between the two women. Carole didn't storm out. She didn't weep. She simply stood straighter and told Camilla, calmly and firmly, "I will remember this." From that moment, reconciliation was no longer possible. The Middletons had been warned, and Carole had made a promise to herself and to her daughter, though no official record of the exchange exists. Fragments of the conversation were overheard by staff tending the nearby rose beds. What they heard was enough to spark years of behind-the-scenes friction. Some aides were silenced, others rotated out quietly, but the seed of enmity had been planted. What began in whispers grew into cold avoidance, deliberate snubs, and unspoken rivalries played out through protocol and precedence. What followed that garden showdown was not reconciliation but escalation, as Camilla began to subtly undermine Catherine's place from the shadows. Behind every royal smile lies a strategy. As Catherine entered the royal fold, Camilla was already executing hers, a quiet, calculated campaign to dilute the Middleton influence. Leaks, snubs, and passive-aggressive protocols weren't accidental. They were warnings, and Carole Middleton knew exactly what was happening. In the gilded corridors of the monarchy, appearances are everything. But behind those appearances, a brutal internal chess match was unfolding. Camilla, ever conscious of status and heritage, viewed the sudden adoration of the Middletons with growing unease. The prospect of a non-aristocratic family business owners, no less gaining direct access to the future queen, future king, and their children, was an affront to everything she had spent decades clawing toward. So, the resistance began quietly. When Catherine was first introduced into full royal life, Camilla reportedly objected to her receiving certain ceremonial privileges, symbolic roles, attire distinctions, even access to certain advisors on the grounds that she hadn't yet earned them. But insiders knew better. This wasn't about merit, it was about bloodlines. The more public-facing signs of tension came through choreography, seating charts, photo arrangements, carefully managed proximity. At official events, Carole was often seated uncomfortably far from her daughter or left off guest lists that traditionally included in-laws. Each decision was minor on its own, but together they painted a stark picture. Camilla was sending a message. "You may be the mother of a future queen, but you are not royalty." That message found echoes in the tabloids. Two whispers of Carole's business ambitions, her supposed over-involvement in George and Charlotte's upbringing, her alleged desire to insert herself into royal affairs. Journalists rarely cited sources directly, but their information bore the fingerprints of someone with access to internal palace chatter. Many suspected Camilla's network. Within the palace, Camilla's reach had grown formidable. She had spent years cultivating loyalty among Charles's closest aides, senior courtiers, and a select group of trusted advisors. Their allegiance wasn't to the crown, it was to her. Through them, narratives could be shaped, allies rewarded, dissenters sidelined, and Carole, with her common roots and unfiltered access to her daughter and grandchildren, was viewed as a disruptive force. Terms like too ambitious, too controlling, and too involved began circulating, never officially, but often enough to influence perception. Carole, it seemed, wasn't just unwelcome, she was inconvenient. Caught between these forces was William, loyal to Catherine, respectful of Camilla, and increasingly burdened with expectations, he became the unwilling fulcrum in a silent war. Sources say he began to pull back from Camilla's inner circle around this time, choosing instead to lean on his wife and in-laws for emotional grounding. This only deepened Camilla's resentment. She had fought to be accepted as stepmother to a future king, and now her influence was being chipped away by the very family she had once dismissed as outsiders. But just as Camilla's silent war intensified, Carole struck back not with scandal but with access, loyalty, and something the palace feared most: popularity. To the outside world, the Middletons were perfect, in-laws. But to the old guard within the monarchy, they were something far more dangerous, a parallel power centre. Carole's access to Catherine and the children gave her influence that Camilla could not control. And that imbalance would fuel years of hostility. As Catherine embraced her new role, her anchor remained her family, and at the centre of that familial strength was Carole. She wasn't just a doting grandmother. She was an ever-present force in the daily lives of the future king and his siblings. From school runs to birthday parties, Carole's involvement wasn't ceremonial. It was intimate, lived, and constant. That kind of presence, particularly in the earliest years of George's life, created ripples within the palace. For Camilla, already battling to retain her place in a rigid hierarchy that only begrudgingly accepted her, the sight of Carole occupying such a central role wasn't just insulting, it was threatening. She saw it as a usurpation not of title, but of emotional territory, the kind of influence that couldn't be codified but held more sway than any ribbon or sash. The quiet storm gained strength each time the Cambridges chose Bucklebury over Balmoral, or spent Christmas at the Middleton estate instead of Sandringham. Each holiday spent under Carole's roof was viewed by traditional courtiers as a subtle but intentional shift away from royal tradition and toward maternal dominance. When William himself began speaking warmly, even publicly, about the comfort and normalcy of the Middleton home, the message was loud and clear. In matters of family life, Carole was winning, and Camilla was losing. What made it worse was the Queen's silent tolerance. Elizabeth, who had long valued discretion and domestic stability, reportedly approved of Carole's steadying influence. Though she never said so publicly, she quietly supported Catherine's closeness with her mother. The Queen saw in Carole a quiet dignity, a refusal to chase the spotlight, and most importantly, a stabilizing presence that kept Catherine grounded amid suffocating expectations. That tacit approval was a dagger to Camilla's pride. In the Queen's eyes, the Middletons were not interlopers, they were necessary. But Carole didn't stop at being a grandmother. In her own unassuming way, she began building a soft power network, hosting gatherings with aristocrats, maintaining friendly ties with former courtiers, and navigating the social web of Windsor-adjacent figures with a surprising finesse. Camilla noticed. And it didn't sit well. Sources close to her say she often remarked privately that Carole was too involved, too comfortable, and too visible. She believed the monarchy should remain cloistered, not interwoven with middle-class ambitions and outside loyalties. The final blow came when Camilla began lobbying, through senior aides, to restrict Carole's visibility at major state functions. It started with invitations, quietly, getting lost, then with seating arrangements that kept her out of key photographs. The aim was never open exclusion, it was erosion, a campaign of subtle diminishment, designed to reassert boundaries that Carole had, in Camilla's view, trespassed. But while influence festered behind closed doors, a public misstep would drag the feud from the shadows onto the front page, a fleeting moment captured on live television. But it was all royal watchers needed. Queen Camilla, seated beside Carole Middleton at Wimbledon, visibly recoiled after a whispered exchange. Lip readers, insiders, and former aides all weighed in. The feud had crossed into public view and there was no going back. What began as a routine appearance at the All England Club spiraled into one of the most dissected public spectacles in recent royal history. Camilla and Carole had been seated side by side in the royal box, an arrangement some claimed was a last-minute decision made by the protocol office, while others insisted it was Camilla's trap, a setup meant to humiliate. For the first several minutes, things appeared calm. Both women applauded politely, exchanged stiff remarks, and nodded at familiar faces in the crowd. But then came the moment, the flash of discomfort across Camilla's face as Carole leaned in. The Queen Consort pulled back sharply, almost involuntarily. Her jaw tightened, her lips thinned, and a brief but unmistakable glance of disdain flickered across her expression. It lasted only seconds, but it was enough. Within hours, the clip went viral. Body language experts flooded morning shows, each breaking down Camilla's reaction frame by frame. Was it contempt, disgust, fear? Social media ignited with speculation. Theories multiplied. Some claimed Carole had whispered a personal jab. Others insisted Camilla had finally let slip the icy truth behind years of whispered tension. Then came the lip readers. Several alleged that Carole had leaned in and quietly said, "Some things don't disappear just because you ignore them." To which Camilla allegedly replied under her breath, "Neither do imposters." The palace, predictably, refused to comment. What followed behind the scenes was chaos. Royal aides scrambled to reset the narrative. Off-the-record calls to trusted reporters tried to downplay the moment as a misunderstanding. They pointed to poor acoustics, camera angles, and tightly edited footage. But it was too late. The damage was done. The world had seen what the palace had tried to hide for years. Not a cordial relationship between two matriarchs, but a cold, carefully staged détente that was cracking in real time. Catherine, seated just a row behind them, became the accidental symbol of that tension. Her smile, tight, uncertain, and visibly forced, was frozen in press photographs that ran alongside damning headlines. Queen Camilla snubs, Carole Middleton matriarch humiliated, on live TV. Behind the smile, insiders revealed, Catherine was devastated. The two women she depended on most had crossed a line, publicly, and she was now at the center of a crisis neither she nor William had seen coming. It wasn't just a personal embarrassment, it was a political landmine, threatening to derail the fragile peace between Windsor's inner circles. But as headlines raged and commentators took sides, something shifted in the public's perception. For years, Carole had been portrayed as the quiet power behind Catherine's grace. Now, she was the wronged matriarch, calm in the face of royal disdain, poised despite the provocation. Sympathy swelled in her direction, especially among younger Britons and working families who saw in her a reflection of themselves, an outsider, enduring and surviving royal coldness. The Wimbledon fallout forced both women into opposite corners, but the real battle was just beginning, and it would involve the next generation. When Prince George was born, the world rejoiced, but behind palace doors, a private war was underway over one critical decision: his godparents. Camilla believed she deserved a symbolic role, but Carole had another name in mind. And what followed exposed just how deep the mistrust had become. From the moment George's arrival was announced, the royal machinery sprang into motion: press briefings, ceremonial protocols, photo arrangements. But behind the polished exterior, a far more sensitive matter stirred. Who would be named among the select few to serve as spiritual guardians to the future king? Camilla, elevated now as queen consort in waiting and increasingly asserting her influence, made her expectations clear to Charles's inner circle. This would be her gesture of reconciliation, of legacy. Being named a godmother to George, even in a symbolic capacity, would be a public affirmation of her place within the next generation of the monarchy. She didn't push, she simply presumed. What Camilla did not account for was Carole Middleton's quiet but resolute hand in the matter. According to palace aides, Carole voiced her desire for someone within the Middleton orbit to be selected, either her brother, a close friend, or a trusted confidant who had been there through Catherine's darkest and brightest moments. To Carole, this was not about rank, it was about loyalty, consistency, and real-life support. And when the final godparent list was discreetly circulated among senior family members, Camilla's name was absent. The omission was deliberate, and it was devastating. Sources close to Clarence House say Camilla's response was immediate and volcanic. Behind closed doors, she called it a public humiliation, not because she had expected power, but because she had expected acknowledgement. Being denied that role sent a clear message, and it wasn't just from Carole, it was, in Camilla's eyes, endorsed by William and Catherine themselves. That wound cut deeper than anyone anticipated. It wasn't just about a title, it was about placement within a family hierarchy that Camilla believed she had clawed her way into after decades of scandal and sacrifice. Caught in the middle, Catherine bore the emotional burden of brokering peace. Insiders suggest that during the weeks leading up to George's christening, she was forced to mediate indirect communications between her mother and Camilla, trying desperately to soothe egos while protecting her son's future. William, for his part, found himself torn between two powerful maternal figures: the woman who raised his beloved wife, and the stepmother who had tried, however imperfectly, to become part of his fractured past. What shocked many was the press's eerie silence. No leaks, no gossip, no sensational headlines. For once, the royal rota stood still. But that wasn't due to respect, it was containment. Senior advisors had worked overtime to ensure this private slight didn't make the front pages. It remained a hidden fracture, visible only to those within the walls of Kensington and Clarence House, until now. But while titles and ceremonies mattered, it was the Queen Mother's secret blessing that shifted everything and reopened wounds that had barely healed. Sealed for decades and hidden deep within Windsor archives, a letter from the Queen Mother has surfaced, and its contents are staggering. Meant for the eyes of Queen Elizabeth alone, it speaks of the mothers who will shape the monarchy's soul. One name is included, and it isn't Camilla's. The letter, handwritten in fading ink and dated just months before the Queen Mother's passing, was never intended for public consumption. Yet somehow, its existence was leaked first to a senior archivist, then whispered through the palace corridors, until a former Windsor staffer finally exposed it in a private memoir draft. The contents were electrifying. In it, the Queen Mother reflected not on bloodlines or protocol, but on the emotional and moral foundations she believed would, to sustain the monarchy through its most turbulent years. She spoke of grace, humility, and the vital importance of maternal guidance that does not seek attention, but embodies quiet strength. Then, in a moment of stunning clarity, she named one woman as emblematic of that future, Carole Middleton. The reference was brief but unmistakable. "I have observed her from afar," the Queen Mother wrote. "There is dignity in her restraint, influence in her silence. The future may very well owe more to her presence than we yet understand." Nowhere in the letter was Camilla mentioned, not as a contrast, not as a compliment, not at all. For some, it was interpreted as a gentle oversight, but for others, especially those in Camilla's camp, it was a deliberate and chilling omission, a snub from beyond the grave. Word of the letter reached Queen Elizabeth during the twilight of her reign, and while it was never officially acknowledged, insiders believe it altered her approach to Carole in subtle but unmistakable ways. Invitations became more frequent. Seating arrangements grew more respectful. At one Christmas gathering, a source reported that Her Majesty personally ensured Carole was seated closer to Catherine than Camilla was. In hindsight, it was strategy. The Queen, ever attuned to legacy, had quietly chosen whom she believed would provide the emotional ballast for the next generation. When Camilla discovered the letter's contents, the fury was seismic. She reportedly accused aides of idolizing the commoners and privately dismissed the letter as revisionist sentimentality. But her anger revealed something deeper, an unspoken fear that no title, no crown, could force affection where it had never taken root. For years, she had fought for her place at the table, and now a ghost from the past had redrawn the seating chart with a few strokes of pen and paper. What made the revelation even more bitter was its timing. It surfaced just as Camilla had begun feeling secure, her role cemented, her influence normalized, her place in the royal narrative seemingly unchallenged. And then, this relic appeared a quiet testament to a woman she had long underestimated, now immortalized in the reflections of the last great matriarch of the House of Windsor. For Camilla, this wasn't just about legacy, It was about survival. And her next move would be as bold as it was unforgivable. Cornered by public sympathy for Carole, humiliated by historic revelations, and increasingly isolated within the palace, Queen Camilla made her most aggressive move, yet she issued an ultimatum to the crown. Either her role is respected and solidified, or she walks. And behind her words was a terrifying threat. What had begun as a cold feud had now become a crisis at the heart of the monarchy. Camilla, once the master of quiet maneuvering, abandoned subtlety entirely. In a private memorandum delivered to the king's advisors, and later confirmed in closed-door conversations, she laid out a brutal list of demands. At the top, full authority over all royal press access. No interviews, no photographs, no soft-focus Middleton narratives would be allowed to circulate without her office's explicit consent. She wanted control of the lens because the lens, she knew, had become Carole's greatest weapon. The public adored the dignified mother-in-law, the steadfast grandmother, the elegant presence beside Catherine. Camilla wanted that image shattered or erased. Then came the second demand. Carole Middleton was to be banned from royal balcony appearances. The reasoning, cloaked in protocol, was that only blood royals and consorts should appear before the people on such sacred occasions. But everyone knew the truth. It was personal. It was spite. Camilla could no longer bear to share the spotlight with a woman whose quiet grace outshone her practiced composure. This wasn't about titles. It was about dominance. But the final demand was the most chilling. Camilla threatened to leak decades of private family correspondence letters between Charles and William, notes from the Queen to Camilla herself. Personal reflections never meant to see the light of day. She would not be painted as the villain, she warned, not while the palace allowed Carole to bask in unearned reverence. She would take the entire narrative down, burn the illusion to ash, and walk away from the crown if she had to. The monarchy reeled. Charles, blindsided, was thrown into emotional paralysis. For years he had walked a tightrope between his wife's fragile standing and his son's quiet resentment. Now he was being forced to choose not between right and wrong, but between two worlds. One was the woman who stood beside him in the darkest hour of scandal. The other was the family that represented the monarchy's future, legacy, and public favour. Advisors begged for calm. But Camilla's fury could not be tamed. The point came during a hastily arranged meeting between Charles, Camilla, William, and Catherine. What was intended as a civil resolution devolved into chaos. Witnesses outside the room reported raised voices, Camilla shouting about betrayal, William refusing to back down, Catherine quietly pleading for the monarchy's dignity to be preserved. And when Camilla stormed out, slamming the door behind her, it was clear the damage was no longer theoretical. It was real. It was bleeding. Carole, as always, remained silent. But those close to her say her only response was a soft-spoken phrase to Catherine that echoed louder than any press release. Grace wins in the end. She refused to retaliate, refused to beg for inclusion, refused to play the game on Camilla's terms. Her restraint was devastating. But before anyone could respond, fate intervened, an unexpected leak that would unravel everything and end the silence forever. The final blow didn't come from the press. It came from within. A private recording, Camilla speaking candidly about her disdain for the Middleton legacy, was leaked. The audio sent shockwaves through the monarchy. And for Carole Middleton, it was vindication. For Catherine, it was heartbreak. The recording, captured during an intimate dinner among a small circle of senior royals and trusted confidants, was never meant to leave the room. Camilla had spoken freely, unaware that a discreetly placed device, still untraced, had been quietly capturing every word. In the recording, her tone was sharp, unfiltered, entirely stripped of the polish she displayed in public. She dismissed Carole as an intruder to royal dignity, someone who built influence without pedigree, and went further to claim that the Middleton presence had weakened the mystique of the monarchy. She laughed lightly as she said it, as if mocking the idea that Carole could ever have been seen as an asset. It was brutal. It was personal. And when it leaked, it was catastrophic. The moment Catherine heard the recording, Insiders say she broke down in tears. For years, she had fought to hold peace between two women who shaped her world in opposite ways. One, the mother who raised her, the other, the queen she had dutifully supported. The tape shattered any illusion of neutrality. It exposed the depth of Camilla's resentment and revived every wound Catherine had tried to bury. Her heartbreak was not just for herself, but for the cruelty shown toward the woman who had been her anchor since childhood. The strain on her voice, her silence afterward, her refusal to comment, these became their own tragedies. William's reaction was the opposite. Fury. Cold, immediate, and unrestrained. Those close to him described a controlled explosion, a storm of anger that had been building for years, now detonated by undeniable proof. He confronted Charles within hours, demanding accountability. The crisis meeting that followed was tense enough that staff stationed outside the room reportedly heard raised voices, a rare but telling sign of how deeply the betrayal cut. William accused Camilla of poisoning the institution from within, of undermining Catherine, of disrespecting the family that had given the monarchy new life. It was the rawest, most emotional clash between father and son since the darkest days of the House of Windsor. As the tape spread, the public turned. Sympathy for Camilla evaporated overnight. Opinion polls shifted dramatically, with thousands calling for accountability. Hashtags trended for days. Editorials dissected every syllable. Suddenly, it wasn't Carole under scrutiny. It was Camilla. The woman who had spent decades reshaping her image now watched it collapse in real time. Yet through the chaos, Carole remained silent until she delivered one short, devastating statement. "My silence was never weakness." In just 5 words, she cut through the noise with the dignity that had always unsettled Camilla most. It was calm, it was resolute, and it landed with the finality of a verdict. The monarchy, already fractured, now faced a reckoning that could no longer be delayed. Loyalties were questioned, alliances were exposed, and beneath it all was the unspoken truth that the feud had never been about etiquette or protocol. It was about power, legacy, and two women whose worlds were never meant to collide. And now, with the monarchy shaken and the truth finally laid bare, the question isn't whether the feud was real, but whether the family can ever truly recover from it. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.